The door chime bleated, a bureaucratic sound like an apology rehearsing. The screen showed a woman with Nia's eyes and none of her steadiness, hair wind-tangled, coat missing buttons in the pattern of haste. Records whispered, war correspondent, arrested twice, released thrice, citizen activist, mother. The bracelet went very still. I need to see my daughter, she replied, palms pressed together like a promise. Tomorrow is safer, I told her gently. The feeds haven't decided if they like us. I don't care if the feeds like me, she said. I care that the board thinks it can put a monster in her life and call it repair. Argument would have been simple. I opened the door instead, because sometimes the safest move is risk. She entered like weather, bringing new air and rearranging loose items without touching them, stood by the bed without waking the child, then faced me with her jaw set. I'm Layla, she said. Protect her or I will turn everything you are into a tool that makes you wish for death. That was a metaphor, she added when the bracelet prickled. Mostly. I accept the terms. Very well. She measured my reach and balance, apparently satisfied, and found the strawberry captain. She pinched away a dead leaf and set it on the sill like a crisp signature. She's decided it's a captain, she said. Ships need captains, even potted ones. I don't like the world making her an example. The world made me one first, I said. Then don't make her yours, she replied. We built a schedule because schedules are spells that confuse chaos. Morning call to Phobos. Long walk to school by the pigeon route. Visitor sticker. Ms. Halima's time travel mug. Snack at the automat as a control variable. Sensory safari. Baths that smelled like lemon candy that had seen things. Captain Jam alternating between watch post and bedside. In emergency, I would carry Nia, the plant, and the backpack. Layla would carry Rage and whatever else fit in pockets. The plan was absurd. It was also a net. As the city quieted, I stood guard at the bedroom door. My kind doesn't sleep much in peacetime and not at all during oaths. The judge's phrasing replayed, intent dragging probability. I had spent a career making stories end early. Now the story wanted a long middle. The irony nodded and then, unexpectedly, loosened. Perhaps the universe wasn't done with me. Perhaps it was running an experiment. What happens if you put a blade in a nursery and ask it to open presents? Near dawn a drone drifted too near the window, curious or cruel. I stepped into its sensor cone. It felt my category and hesitated, algorithms clattering like nervous teeth. I did not hiss. I did not pluck it from the sky. I peeled the smile sticker from my helmet and pressed it to the glass, face outward. The drone blinked, embarrassed by its own plot, and wandered off. Behind me, as if she had been waiting for that cue, Nia sat up. Good, she said, entirely satisfied. You didn't eat me. Not today, I said, because monsters are allowed one joke before breakfast. She laughed, the room brightened, and somewhere very far away one of the universe's smaller rules rolled over, yawned, and went back to sleep. Some mornings the city wakes up mean. By the time we reached the school gate, the air already carried the tension of a storm no one had scheduled. Clouds leaned too low, violet where they should have been polite blue, and the security bollards flickered between welcome and wait. Nia bounced beside me, humming an invented song about Captain Jam's promotion to Admiral. Her backpack thumped rhythmically against her small frame. I kept pace, scanning rooftop edges for movement, air vents for breath that didn't belong. The board's decree was barely a week old, but the pairing had already upset several predictable balances. Monsters are meant to be locked away, or at least hidden where bad memories can fade. Children are meant to be guarded by clean records and gentle hands. We broke both rules every time we walked down the street. Ms. Halima met us at the gate, hijab patterned like a galaxy, smile precise enough to fit into the school's safety manual. She clipped a visitor badge to my chest, Guardian in black capitals, and whispered, "We've had 2 journalists trying to sneak in. Don't cause a scene unless you have to." "I'm here for the child," I said. It was a promise and a warning. She nodded like someone who understood both. Inside, the school smelled of crayons, disinfectant, and the faint ozone tang of overworked learning modules. We found Nia's cubby, labeled in her careful block letters, and stowed Admiral Jam on a windowsill. "You'll wait here," she told the plant, adjusting its leaves. "Don't let anyone boss you around." Halfway through the morning, I noticed the first anomaly. A maintenance bot trundled past the classroom 3 times in as many minutes. It's been empty, its sensors tilted slightly inward. On the 4th pass, it paused at the door just long enough for a tiny lens to adjust. Surveillance disguised as incompetence. I memorized its serial number. At recess, Nia joined a jump rope game, her braids snapping in time. I stood in the yard's shadow perimeter, the way one does when one wants to be both present and ignorable. Across the fence, 2 men loitered beside a service hatch, exchanging the 2 casual weight shifts of people pretending to wait. One palmed a communicator, the other scanned the yard with a predator's slowness. The bracelet tightened on my arm. Narrative law, no direct violence unless the child's safety is in immediate jeopardy. I could not break the fence. I could not remove their throats. Instead, I tapped my helmet's comms. "Unit 42 to Campus Admin. We have unauthorized watchers at the East Hatch." The reply came in a monotone. "Noted." Response time, delayed. Delayed meant no one was coming soon. I crouched to Nia as she skipped toward the drinking fountain. "Sensory safari," I said softly. "Tell me what you see." "Loose bolt on the fountain," she murmured. "Big crow on the roof. The man in a gray coat isn't watching the crow." "Good," she noticed. "We're leaving after water," I told her. Her eyes flicked once to the fence, then back to me. She didn't ask questions, she just took my hand. We walked out as if heading for lunch off campus. The men shifted, one moving to cut us off. I adjusted our path toward the main street, using passing parents as cover. In my visor's edge, I saw the second man speak into his communicator. The first complication came 2 blocks later. A drone, not the curious civilian kind, but the military-adapted hover type with segmented wings, dipped low over the street. Its ID beacon was scrambled. It hovered just long enough to map my armor, then zipped out of sight. Surveillance wasn't an accident anymore. We took the long way back toward the apartment, weaving through market stalls. Vendors called out deals, some to us directly. "Monster needs spice? Guardian gets free sweets for the little one." Nia collected a paper cone of candied nuts. I scanned the rooftops for glints of optics. That's when the false fire alarm triggered. Shutters clanged down on both ends of the market, trapping us with a crowd of 50 strangers. Some panicked, some filmed on their wrist comms, and some, too calm, were here for reasons unrelated to commerce. The bracelet hummed warning. "Choose care." I put Nia on my shoulders. "Game time," I said. "You're the captain now. Tell me which way we sail." She grinned despite the tension. "Through the spice aisle, port side." We moved. The crowd shifted like a sea in crosscurrent. 2 of the calm ones began following, hands hidden beneath coats. I slowed near a display of turmeric bricks, then lifted the entire table with one hand, spilling powder into the air. A golden cloud exploded between us and the followers, coating them head to boot. They coughed, swore, lost sight. Nia leaned down, whispering, "Starboard now!" We pushed through an emergency exit as market security finally arrived. Outside, the shutters reopened with apologetic chimes. Someone had accidentally triggered the system. By the time we reached the apartment, Layla was pacing on the balcony. "What happened?" "Interest," I said. "Unwanted." She frowned. "I told you the feeds were stirring up trouble. Half the pundits are calling you an experiment, half are calling you a weapon on a leash. And some want to prove you're neither." That night, the second complication arrived. A package at our door, no return address, wrapped in neutral gray. Inside, a small, crude carving of my silhouette, with a chain around the neck. A message etched in the base: "Protect her from this, if you can." Layla's jaw set like stone. "They want you to feel hunted." "I always am," I said. But now they want her to feel it too. The next day, I insisted on a different route to school. We took the riverside walk, where the air smelled of algae and iron, and the pedestrian traffic was heavy enough to be cover. Nia pointed out boats, gulls, and once, a fish that jumped as if to greet her. For a moment, the world seemed almost possible. Then the third complication appeared. A trio of street performers blocked the path ahead, acrobats in bright silks, tossing knives between them in perfect arcs. The crowd stopped to watch, forming a ring. My visor caught the reflection in one blade, a fourth figure, hidden behind a maintenance pillar, lens trained on us. The bracelet didn't need to warn me, my instincts did. I stepped forward, coin in hand, as if to tip the jugglers. "Drop the finale early," I murmured. The nearest acrobat, eyes flicking to my badge, nodded subtly, then tossed 3 blades high in a burst of motion. The crowd gasped, stepping back just enough for me to guide Nia out a side gap. Behind us, a commotion, someone shouting about stolen equipment, another about a broken lens. I didn't look back. By week's end, the pattern was clear. Whoever was behind this wasn't trying to take Nia outright, not yet. They were testing boundaries, watching my methods, learning the rhythm of our days. That made it worse. Predators who wait are harder to counter. So I changed the game. We started leaving at random times, taking different transport each day, once a ferry, once a delivery tram, once a rented tandem bike that Nia insisted on steering for 3 terrifying blocks. We ate in unpredictable places, visited public gardens, even attended a puppet show where the monster character was comically polite. Nia laughed so hard she nearly fell off the bench. Through it all, I kept the sensory safari alive. She described paint peeling from a doorway, a cat with a missing ear, the way the light bent differently through rain versus mist. She was learning to see like a guardian, and I was learning that vigilance could be a shared game rather than a solitary burden. But the pressure mounted. Every night, Layla found new mentions of us on the feeds, photos from too close angles, commentary dissecting every gesture, conspiracy threads about the monster-child bond. Some commenters argued that I was being softened for propaganda. Others claimed Nia was bait to control me. A few suggested removing her. For her own safety. Layla slammed her tablet shut one evening. "We can't stay here. Not with this level of attention. Leaving will show them they can push us," I said. Staying could get her killed. We didn't finish the argument. The next morning, the fourth complication arrived without disguise. A black transport with tinted windows idled outside the school gate. Its license pinged as government issued but with no department tag. 2 figures in plain suits stepped out, one holding a folder, the other a sleek restraint device. They claimed they had orders to transfer Nia to a safer facility. "Orders from who?" I asked. "Need to know," one replied. The bracelet constricted, sensing the immediate threat. Narrative law bent just enough. I stepped between them and Nia. "You don't need to know my answer either," I said and moved. The first suit stumbled back as I shifted my stance. The second raised the restraint, too slow. I caught his wrist, not breaking it but making it clear how easily I could. Around us, parents began filming. The suits hesitated. Bad optics are the monster's ally. They withdrew, muttering about misunderstandings. The transport rolled away. But I knew this was only the beginning. Whoever they were, they had just tested how far they could go before I crossed the line. That night, Nia asked me a question that cut deeper than any threat. "Do you think the universe made a mistake putting us together?" I looked at her, the blanket, the braids, the stubborn eyes that had already learned too much, and said, "No. But I think it's about to find out how far we'll go to prove it didn't." And somewhere, in the dark corners where rules are written in whispers, I could almost feel the universe leaning closer, curious about what we would do next. Everyone knows monsters eat children. I was the first sentenced to guard one. They fastened a bronze bracelet around my forearm and pressed a smiley sticker onto my helmet, as if law and whimsy together could civilize a catastrophe. I am Kark 7, nicknamed Gravel by comrades who mistook endurance for friendship and Butcher by those who ran out of time. My armor is grown from volcanic chitin, my breath a solvent mist, and my fingers are knives pretending to be fingers. On the dais above us, the Board of Causal Ethics arranged their nanofiber robes to look like history. Across the aisle sat a child wrapped in a blanket, legs swinging, beside a potted strawberry. The courtroom smelled faintly of ozone and spilled juice. A social worker's hands trembled as she checked the clasp on the bracelet and told me in a steady voice to please kneel. She waited on a bench too large for her, wrapped in a blanket of cartoon suns, beside a potted strawberry and a cracked ceramic pot lettered Captain Jam. She looked at my reflection in the domed visor, not at me, as if testing which creature would answer. "I'm Nia," she said, lifting the plant solemnly. "You're late." "I was reclassified," I said, which is how a violent person apologizes. The bracelet hummed. Its lattice sank through me like frost, rounding edges from intention to effect. I could still lift a tank. I could no longer flip a planet. "I am your guardian." "Obviously." She patted the bench. I sat carefully. The bench survived. The social worker exhaled a folded prayer into her sleeve and did not run. If you have never been measured by the eyes of a fragile thing, you have never been measured at all. Nia studied me like a lab tech evaluating a new centrifuge, professionally, with hope and with quiet suspicion. "Do you have eyes?" she asked. "Or do you just know stuff?" "Both," I said. "The knowing is worse. That's what my mom says." She tucked the blanket tighter, and the words dissolved into the fabric. On the dais, the presiding judge cleared her throat and read the accords. Every monster who had broken a city would guard one child from the harmed population. Pairings would be enforced by narrative law. "Your intent," she told me, "will drag probability behind it like a comet's tail. Choose care and coincidences will tilt to your aid. Choose harm and the universe will set traps under your feet. Impossibilities," she said. "You will be forced to improvise kindness." The gallery shifted uneasily. Compassion did not detonate inside me. My kind takes time, we do not bloom on command. Logistics rolled up with a car seat rated for collisions, re-entry, and pride. A creche tech with fluorescent hair tried to teach me the buckles. My fingers are knives. The buckles were circles invented by a pacifist god. I snapped too. The tech sighed, cinched straps with theatrical competence, and declared us space-worthy. "If an asteroid hits," she told Nia, "you'll be fine." She glanced at me. "He won't." We left the court carrying 4 ridiculous items: the strawberry captain, the car seat, an emergency allergy kit the size of my thigh, and a yellow backpack embroidered with a jubilant giraffe. Inside the pack sat a spare sweater, a rain cape, a comic crystal about a heroic hedgehog, and a paper titled NIA's plan for the day in laddered capitals. At the bottom, in wobblier letters, maybe cry. Maybe don't. Children issue the bravest directives. At noon we boarded a municipal shuttle shaped like the letter Q. Nia's mother had not arrived. Calls died in bureaucratic static. I chose a route with the fewest ambush vectors and the friendliest lamp posts. You learn to read lamp posts in this city. They watch everyone equally. Nia held Captain Jam like a medal and asked, "Do you know any songs?" At our first stop, a family automat with stools shaped like punctuation, the serving bay tried to refuse me. Its sensor read me as ordnance. "No hostile ordnance within 80 meters of a child," it chirped. "He's my family," Nia said, with the effortless authority that cracks small rules. The automat reconsidered, beeped an apology, and ejected a tray, grilled cheese triangles, Cintaberry foam, and a nutrient brick apparently engineered for creatures who digest boulders. I did. It tasted like laminated perseverance. "School starts tomorrow," Nia said between bites. "You'll meet Ms. Halima. She has a mug that says teachers are time travelers because kids are little time machines. Also, you need a visitor sticker. They don't let anyone in without a sticker." "I already have one," I said, tapping the smile on my helmet. She laughed, quick and bright. "I studied vents, track lights, a maintenance hatch whose screws shone with recent attention. The bracelet tightened in reminder. Be a guardian. Turn war flame into an adjective. By late afternoon our pairing had reached the feeds. People took pictures as we crossed plazas lit by citrus-colored suns tethered to balloons. Comments accreted like barnacles. War criminal turned nanny, omen with a rain cape, walking headline with a potted captain. People who hate loudly often move first. Two figures peeled off a cluster with the velocity of bad intentions. My throat opened for the hiss that ends conversations and sometimes careers. The bracelet burned a precise no. I crouched to Nia. If I tell you it's a game, will you play? What are the rules? You will describe everything very small. Dust, threads, reflections. I will not know them unless you say them. We count to 30. She grinned. Sensory safari. Softly, she pointed. Dust glittering on the balloon's string. Shadow inside the crack by the vending wheel. The man with the hat holding his breath like he's snorkeling in air. The woman with the key tattoo whose hand isn't shaking like the rest of her. 30. Excellent, I said, rising. The two figures stalled like mice noticing a rotating cat. I looked at string, crack, hat, key. They developed sudden passion for a brochure about rooftop gardens. We finished lunch. Standing still beside a child is the loudest thing I have ever done. Night delivered us to a temporary apartment, 2 rooms, a kitchen the size of my childhood coffin, a balcony where pigeons held committee meetings. The walls had been reset to factory meadow. Digital rye whispered whenever you walked by. Nia posted Captain Jam on the windowsill as sentry. I checked locks and angles and then remembered I wasn't allowed lines of fire. Bath time, she announced, briefing troops. The apartment conjured bubbles. I waited in the hall, listening to small competent noises. Humans insist they are fragile. I have seen their bones knit around titanium and their hearts reroute around grief. She emerged damp-haired and swaddled, pressed the hedgehog crystal into my palm, and asked me to read. My voice is not for bedtime, I said. It can be, she answered, and engineers have moved planets with less faith. I read. The hedgehog made the obvious mistake, then the brave one. Nia fell asleep halfway through the brave one, which is how you know trust has begun. Trust is not about the end. It is about believing someone will carry you across the middle. Nights, the city sleeps like a cat. Others, it sleeps like a trap. 2 weeks into our pairing, the trap finally snapped. It began with the quiet. No hum of the streetcars outside, no clatter from the bakery downstairs, no pigeons quarreling on the balcony rail. Even the building's ventilation felt muted, as if the air itself had been asked to wait. I was on the balcony, helmet off, tracing the skyline for changes. That's when I saw the signal, a single flash from the roof of the abandoned tower 3 blocks east. Not the kind of flash that says, help, the kind that says, now. The bracelet pulsed. Immediate jeopardy. Narrative law had shifted from leash to key. Inside, Nia slept curled against a blanket of cartoon suns, Admiral Jam in the place of honor on the windowsill. Layla was at her desk, sifting through feeds, eyes narrowed at some half-formed headline. She looked up, catching my expression. It's here, isn't it? Yes, I said. Get her ready to move. She didn't argue, just scooped Nia up, blanket and all. The girl woke halfway, blinking at the sudden urgency. Sensory safari? She murmured. More like speed run, Layla said. I grabbed the backpack, stuffed the allergy kit inside, and slung it over my shoulder. Captain Jam went in the crook of my other arm. A monster learns early. You do not leave behind the things your ward calls important. The elevator was dead. Stairs, then, 12 flights down in a building whose stairwell lighting had been cut. My armor's low-light mode painted everything in ghostly blue outlines. Twice we paused, listening to footsteps that weren't ours. Once I heard the scrape of something metal drag along the wall 2 floors below. When we reached the lobby, the glass doors were already shattered inward. A transport van idled outside, black like the one at the school but bulkier, with reinforced panels. In front stood 4 figures, 2 in plain suits, 2 in matte body armor. The armored ones carried pulse rifles. Layla froze behind me. Options? She whispered. 1, I said and stepped forward. The first suit spoke. You've had your trial period. The child comes with us now. She'll be kept safe, away from this arrangement. She is safe, I said, voice low enough to vibrate the air. The second suit nodded to the armored pair. Remove the guardian. The rifles came up. I moved before the order finished leaving his mouth. The first shot cracked against my shoulder plate, dissipated by the chitin, but the impact stung like a giant's fist. I pivoted, knocking the rifle aside, letting the force fling the shooter into the second armored one. They hit the marble floor in a tangle of limbs and cursing. Behind me, Layla was already moving Nia toward the side exit. One suit lunged to intercept. I caught him by the collar, lifted him off the ground, and set him down 3 meters away, not hard enough to break him, but enough to make his bones remember it for days. The other suit drew a sidearm. The barrel tracked toward Layla. I was still 3 steps away when Nia's voice cut the air. Loose tile by your foot. I didn't hesitate. My heel caught the edge she'd spotted. The tile flipped up, a slab of marble to the shin. The suit yelped, weapon dipping just enough for me to grab it, and crushed the frame like soft clay. We pushed into the alley, Layla half carrying Nia, me guarding the rear. The van engine roared. They were coming around. We cut left toward the riverside. I could already hear the thump of rotor blades overhead. The drone wasn't the small recon kind this time. It was a full-size enforcement model, with crowd suppression gear and a spotlight that could see retinas. The beam found us, painting us in white fire. Nia, I said without looking up. Anything small? She scanned, voice steady despite the glare. Metal cable between the bollards ahead. Loose end is coiled on the ground. Perfect. I grabbed the coil as we passed, yanked it taut just as the van rounded the corner at full speed. The bumper caught the cable like a tripwire. The van's front end slammed down, sparks flaring from the undercarriage. The driver's head hit the wheel. The van stalled sideways, blocking half the alley. Go! I barked. We reached the riverwalk just as the drone dipped lower. Layla ducked into the shadow of a mooring post, shielding Nia. I turned to face the machine. It hovered like a hawk, the whine of its rotors matching my pulse. Pulse rifles I could handle. Drones this size required precision. I scanned the chassis, found the intake vents along its underbelly. Too high to reach from the ground. Unless... the mooring post. 6 meters high steel, with climbing rungs. I sprinted, claws digging into the rungs, the bracelet burning against my skin. The drone shifted its focus toward me, spotlight swinging. A stun burst cracked past my head, close enough to raise the hairs along my neck. I launched from the top rung, catching the drone's vent grill with my left hand. My right drove a blade finger into the intake, shearing through fan housing. The rotor screamed, then choked. The drone listed hard, throwing me onto the walkway. It spun twice before crashing into the river with a hiss. When I rolled to my feet, Layla and Nia were already running. I caught up, grabbed the backpack and Captain Jam from Layla to free her arms. We didn't slow until we reached the ferry terminal. The night clerk barely looked up from his novel as we boarded the midnight ferry. The boat's hum was a low comfort as the city lights receded. Only then did Nia speak. They won't stop, will they? No, I said honestly. But neither will I. The ferry took us to the outer borough, older, quieter, with fewer cameras and more shadows. We rented a one-room flat above a repair shop. The ceiling leaked in 2 places. The walls smelled faintly of machine oil. It was perfect. For 3 days we lay low. No school. No markets. Just the 3 of us, keeping watch in shifts, listening to the world breathe beyond our thin walls. I taught Nia basic escape routes, how to read angles, how to use noise as cover. She taught me how to make tea from dried fruit peels and how to tell when a strawberry plant needed water just from the smell of the soil. On the 4th night, Layla returned from a cautious trip to the public terminal with a grim look. I found something. You need to see it. The footage was grainy but clear enough. The suits, the armored ones, even the van, all part of a contractor unit linked to a defense firm called Aegis Line. And Aegis Line had just won a bid to secure and evaluate high-priority juvenile assets. They think she's an asset, I said. They think you're the test, Layla corrected. That changed everything. This wasn't random harassment. It was a program. We were a data point. That night, I made a decision. Running would only keep us alive until the next test. We needed to end the program. It took a day to plan, another to prepare. The third night we moved. Layla stayed with Nia in the flat. I took the ferry back into the city. Aegis Line's local office was in a glass and steel block near the financial district. Security was tight, for humans. I scaled the exterior, using maintenance seams as handholds, reaching the 14th floor where the program director's office glowed faintly. Inside, the director, a narrow man with a voice like sandpaper, was dictating a report. Guardian exhibits adaptive restraint, asset shows increased environmental awareness, recommend escalation to stress phase 2. I stepped into the light. He froze. You end the program, I said. His lips curled. You don't dictate policy. The bracelet warmed, allowing. I moved faster than his panic. One hand closed on his desk, bending it just enough to make the glass top groan. You're making a mistake, I told him. And mistakes with me don't end with second chances. Fear shifted his scent. If I stop, they'll replace me. It won't end. Then make it unprofitable, I said. Lose the asset in your system. Make it look like you failed so badly they cut their losses. He swallowed. And if I don't? I leaned closer, letting him see every serrated edge of me. Then I stopped caring about narrative law. By the time I left, the report was deleted, and the building's lights flickered as if in nervous applause. When I returned, Nia was awake, waiting at the window. Did you win? She asked. Not yet, I said. But I changed the rules. She smiled, small but certain. Good. Because tomorrow, Admiral Jam has a mission. For the first time since the pairing began, I allowed myself to believe we might actually finish this story on our terms. The universe rarely announces when it's about to bend. Sometimes you just feel the floorboards loosen under your feet. We didn't hear from Aegis Line for 9 days. Long enough for Layla to unclench a little, for Nia to go back to drawing comic panels of Admiral Jam piloting a spaceship made of jam jars, for me to almost believe the threat had shifted elsewhere. Almost. But predators don't give up on prey. They reframe the hunt. It started with the rain. Not normal rain, this was too steady, too uniform, as if the clouds had been programmed. The street outside the repair shop was deserted except for a single child's toy, a red plastic spinner, slowly rotating in the gutter. Nia noticed it first. That wasn't there this morning, she said. Layla checked the window. And the corner cameras just blinked off. The bracelet tightened around my arm. Immediate jeopardy. I pulled Nia's backpack close, stuffed the allergy kit and a sealed thermos inside, and lifted Admiral Jam from the sill. We're leaving. Now. Where? Layla asked, already pulling on her coat. Somewhere they can't write the ending, I said. We slipped out the back, into the warren of alleys behind the shop. The rain followed, not drifting, not blown, just falling straight down like a curtain tracking us. By the third turn I knew. Drones were controlling the weather grid in our sector, pushing us toward an extraction point. I turned left instead of right, into a dead-end loading bay. Nia looked up at me without fear. You've got a plan, she said. Yes, I lied. The bay door's keypad was corroded, but my claws aren't just for intimidation. One flick, and the mechanism clicked. Inside was a warehouse filled with broken transit pods stacked like bones in a giant's ribcage. Layla frowned. This doesn't look like escape. It isn't, I said. It's bait. The first drone appeared above the doorway, scanning. I waited until its lens locked on me, then smashed the nearest pod's emergency beacon. Its signal screamed across the district: accident, multiple casualties. Within seconds, more drones converged. If they wanted me, I'd give them me, loud enough to pull their net in tight. Layla, take Nia through the west wall hatch. 2 blocks east is a tram station. Platform 3 runs automated, no driver, no manifest. Get on, and don't get off until you see open fields. Layla's jaw set. What about you? I'll keep the story here. Nia's voice was small but steady. You'll follow us, right? Yes, I said, and this time it wasn't a lie. They slipped away. I turned to face the doorway as the first squad entered, not suits this time, but combat drones on bipedal frames, rifles mounted to their arms. The bracelet hummed, loosening its grip. Immediate jeopardy. Permission granted. I moved. Fast. The first drone's rifle clattered to the floor before it could fire. The second went down under its own collapsing servos as I tore through the power conduit in its chest. Sparks lit the dim space like lightning in a jar. Above, a larger shape blocked the doorway, a mech 3 meters tall, hydraulic fists like battering rams. Its voice boomed through external speakers. Stand down, Kark 7. You are classified hostile under Code Black. Good, I said and charged. We hit hard enough to dent the wall behind it. The mech's arms swung in a wide arc. I ducked, driving my claws into the seam of its shoulder plating. It howled in machine language, throwing me off. I rolled, came up with a length of steel conduit in my grip, and jammed it into the mech's knee joint. The hydraulics screamed. A burst of pulse fire from behind caught my side, punching me forward. The chitin held barely, but the impact stole my breath. I ripped the conduit free and spun, taking out another drone. The mech staggered, recalibrated. Final warning, it growled. Final, yes, I said. It lunged. I sidestepped, using its momentum to drive it into a stack of transit pods. The stack collapsed in a thunder of shattering composite. I didn't wait. I vaulted onto its back, ripped the vent panel free, and drove my hand into the nest of cooling tubes until they burst in a hiss of vapor. The mech shuddered, lights flickering, and went still. The remaining drones hesitated. I looked at them, dripping coolant and rain, and took one slow step forward. That was enough. They withdrew, dragging the ruined mech with them. I didn't celebrate. I ran. By the time I reached Platform 3, the tram had already pulled in. I caught sight of Layla and Nia through the window, Admiral Jam cradled between them. Layla's eyes widened as she saw me sprinting. Nia pressed her hands to the glass. I leapt, catching the tram's side rail, and hauled myself inside as the doors hissed shut. We didn't speak for a long minute, just listened to the hum of the tram as it left the city behind. Rain still streaked the windows, but the streets outside grew quieter, the buildings shorter, the air cleaner. Finally, Nia leaned against me. Did we win? I considered. We ended this part of the story. Layla smiled faintly. And the next part? That, I said, we'll right ourselves. The tram carried us into open fields, where wild grass bent under the last of the artificial rain. We disembarked at a small, unmanned station. The air smelled of earth and something new, freedom, maybe, or just the absence of pursuit. We found shelter in an abandoned farmstead, its roof half gone but its walls solid. Layla started a small fire in the stove. Nia set Admiral Jam in a sunbeam cutting through the broken rafters. I stood in the doorway, scanning the horizon. That's when I felt it. Not danger, not exactly. More like a shift in the air, as if somewhere, something had been recalibrated. The bracelet on my arm warmed, then loosened. Not in warning, not in restraint, just acknowledgement. Nia came to stand beside me. You know what I think? She said. What? I think the universe didn't make a mistake. I think it's just not used to having to make exceptions. I looked down at her, the small figure who had learned to see the loose bolts, the shadows and cracks, the crows on rooftops. Then let's keep giving it reasons to. We stayed in that farmstead for weeks, long enough to plant a little garden. Admiral Jam thrived in the sunlight, putting out tiny white flowers. Nia claimed they were distress flares, calling other strawberries to join. Sometimes we heard distant aircraft, or saw the glint of drones high above. But they never came closer. Maybe Aegis Lion had decided the program was a failure. Maybe the universe had decided that, for once, the monster got to keep the child. One evening, as the sun dropped behind the hills, Layla brought out a battered camera. "We should have proof," she said. "Of what?" I asked. "That this happened. That you were here with her. Not just a story someone made up later." She positioned us in front of the garden, me kneeling, Nia perched on my knee, Admiral Jam between us. The camera clicked. Nia looked at the photo, then up at me. "You don't look like a monster in it," she said. "I am," I replied. "But maybe not the kind they mean." She grinned. "Good. Because Admiral Jam says the next mission is going to need one." The fire crackled inside. The fields whispered under the night wind. And somewhere, far away, in the machinery of probability and law, I think the universe crossed out one of its rules and wrote in a new one. Sometimes, the monster guards the child. And sometimes, the child guards the monster right back.